Hello, friends, and welcome to CareersTalk. I am Suran Sharma, an Agile consultant in Netherlands, and today we have a special series going to be with Shefali Srivastav, who successfully cracked interviews with top companies like Deloitte, SCL, Wipro, LTI, Accenture, and PepsiCo as a Scrum Master. So in this series, we will going to cover, close to 40 to 50 interview questions. So don't forget to subscribe, and we really appreciate if you hit that like button. So let's get started. Hey, hello, Shefali, and I think you serve as a live example and a source of motivation for many Scrum Masters who think that Scrum Master job market is not that great at the moment. So thank you for joining us today, Shefali. Over to you.
Thank, thank you, Sunan, for inviting me. And yes, if you really want to be a Scrum Master, I think nothing can stop you. And if you prepare well, and of course, if you can see the Career Talks videos, I'm sure that you're going to crack your interviews. And there is plenty of opportunities for a Scrum Master because right now, around 90 to 95% of companies, they have already started, being agile to implement the frameworks. So obviously there is a need of a scrum master, agile coach, and everywhere. You just have to think that, okay, I want to do this, I want to prepare well, and then you're going to crack the interviews.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Shefali.
Okay, so
Okay,
let me start with my
yeah, please go ahead.
background a bit because I think that will be more motivating for you. Not for you, Sunan, for the audience.
No, no, for me as well. Please
Yeah,
go
you,
ahead.
you you are a live example of
Uh,
inspiration. So I started my career in 2015 as a backend developer, ETL developer. Um, I worked there in TCS for around 2.5 years, and later I switched to a company where I was working as a QA lead. There only I was exposed to agile and scrum master. I used to see the scrum masters and their work. I was really inspired by that. And then I also kind of thinking of going to that area, going to be focused of being a scrum master. I did a couple of certifications. I closely monitor how a scrum master work, both in agile teams as well as in a scaled agile framework. And when I thought that, okay, now it's the time that I need to switch to a proper scrum master, full scrum master role in different companies, first of all, I started to learn the basics of agile, as well as I started to watch your interviews, and that is really helpful because actually you get the idea of how how interviews ask the questions, interviewers ask the questions. So it is very important for us to be well prepared, and I think that's all we can say.
Thanks, Shefali, for sharing that. Okay. So if you allow, shall we start with our Q&A?
Sure.
For you, what is the role and responsibility of a Scrum Master? And the follow-up question is like how Scrum Master role is different from a project manager.
Okay. So Scrum Master um, is a servant leader, or I can say a true leader in sense, as well as a facilitator. So generally what happens is these are the core responsibilities of a Scrum Master. He is a servant leader. He is a facilitator. He is a kind of protector of his teams, his Scrum teams from the outside world. And there are many roles and responsibility a Scrum Master can play. And these are dependent on the various roles. For example, for a product owner, the Scrum Master's responsibility is to guide him in the backlog, sorting, in making for making him sure that he is picking up the right requirements, and the way he is guiding the developers to pick up the best requirements. He should not be commanding. I mean, he needs to guide the product owner that he should not be commanding. And for a developer, a scrum master plays a different role. He guides the developers, or she guides, for in my case she guides the developers, or she helps the developers to be self-organized, to pick their own user stories, to pick their own work, and to make sure that they understand what outcome we are going to bring if they are going to work on certain roles and responsibilities. For higher management, Scrum Masters, I think the core responsibility of a Scrum Master to educate them about the scrum, about the agile, the roles and usage, and what not to do for a scrum team. What should we do to help the scrum teams achieve their goals, to achieve their best? Overall, I think Scrum Master is a facilitator. He facilitates everything, by making sure that everyone is aligned with each other. They are self-organized, they are self-sufficient, and kind of protector for the team, both from for developers. Scrum Master is a protector from the product owner, from the outside world, and for within each other. They should, sometimes the developers take too many things, even they are beyond their capacity, they exhaust their capacity. So at this point of time, Scrum Master should protect them from themselves, developers from themselves, that they should be very focused on what they can accomplish, not overcommitting, not undercommitting. So all these things. And obviously, I can say that Scrum Master is also responsible for keeping the board, whether it's Jira, whether it's Asana, whether it's ADO, updated by, he can delegate his work to developers or product owners to update the user stories or tickets on time, to make sure that everything is, focused, and to make sure that whatever the tool they are using to, capture the requirements, capture the user stories, that should also be a single source of truth. That means everything should be captured at one place, and either the Scrum Master can take the responsibility to update everything, or he can delegate his work to the developers, that okay, whichever ticket is assigned to a particular developer, to a particular product owner, to a particular XYZ, they should be responsible. So it is like to create a sense of accountability within the team. That is also one of the Scrum Master's responsibility. And I think your second question is how the role differs from a product manager. So I think this is a confusion a lot of people are having. When I say that I'm a Scrum Master to someone, they say, okay, so you're basically like a product manager or project manager or a program manager. The word manager is somewhere, people think that Scrum Master is related to manager, which in fact is not true. It is kind of pseudo Scrum, where people think that Scrum Masters also have the responsibilities similar to manager. In some sense, it's true, but as I can say, the difference lies in the word servant leader and leader. I'll give you a recent example. When I joined a company, my manager told that you need to get access, for example, in XYZ tool, in Outlook. So I said, what I can do? He said that, okay, don't do anything. Just let me know your email ID. I'll raise a request for you. This is the typical manager work, that he is making my job easy by providing me the access, by raising the access from his behalf. What a Scrum Master will do in this sense? I mean, as a Scrum Master, I would tell the team that, okay, I'll provide them the step-by-step process, that, okay, first you have to go in ServiceNow, you have to create a ticket, you have to provide your email ID. And from next time, you can create your own things. You can raise requests by your own. Even if he's not convinced, I'll say that, okay, what I can do is, I just share your screen, I'll guide you. I'll let you know that what are the steps you need to follow in order to raise a ticket. So what I'm creating, maybe developers will, or the particular person will get pissed at me that why she can't raise a ticket on my behalf. But ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm creating a sense of accountability. I'm making him self-organized to make sure that he can take care of his own work. And what I have done, I am guiding him to be self-organized. So I think this is where the difference lies. A project manager, I'm not saying that all the project managers, a project manager helps the team, and a Scrum Master guide the team to be self-organized. So this is a very recent example, because I recently joined a new organization and this came to my way. My manager have raised a ticket on my behalf. And next time when I have to raise something, I again have to go to him, right? But in my case, when a developer came to me and asked me that I need access to this particular share drive, I told him that do this thing, do that thing, and you'll get the access. If not, let me know. I'll share my screen and I'll show you. Or you can share your screen, I'll guide you. So from next time, you'll be able to do it yourself. So self-organized, and this is the responsibility, and this is the key difference, that you are helping the team and guiding the team to be more organized, and they can, take their own responsibilities, do their own work, being independent.
Great. Thanks, Shefali, for that. Great. Okay, so let's move on. The next one is people over process. So can you elaborate this? Like, what do you understand by this?
Yeah, so I think it is one of the very good agile manifestos that we always keep people over process. And it is very essential in agile, not only in agile, I think in everywhere. Sometimes we are always so focused over process that we forget that the process has been defined by people. People are, employees, I can say, employees in this case. For example, many times you have seen that employer is going to their manager, going to their upper management and saying that I'm not well, I'll not be able to complete this deadline, I'm not able to complete this task on time. But because of the deadlines, because of the release ahead, we ignored the health of people, we ignored the way they are feeling. We'll just say, no, either you have to do by this time, or I have to take action, I have to escalate this thing. So I think that is the reason when the creators of Scrum Guide has mentioned this people over process, we ignore the fact, and we always think, I mean, that's a general tendency that people are related to people over process. They always, think that that means that in Scrum we don't have to follow any process. I mean, that is the general tendency, because when I was doing an agile training, I was giving, trainings to my previous company. So when I was telling these are the 4 agile manifestos, so a person has raised this good question, that if people over process is very, lenient in Scrum, then why we follow process? Why have to document? Why we have to document everything? Why there are so many documentation? There are so many processes we are following in Scrum. So I think people over process is a delusional thing, though the person who has written the Scrum Guide, he is also joined in my LinkedIn. His intention was different. He just wanted to make sure that we should always give priority to the employees, priority to the people, priority to their concerns over processes. But it is always not necessary that we should not all follow any process. We have to make sure, or I can say in a very simple word, I'll not sugarcoat my words, people will leave the organization, but processes will not leave, right? So it's always good to follow processes without losing the essence of Scrum, without losing the essence of Agile. A very good example I can give you is in my last project, dev lead. I mean, in UK, I think the notice period is just 2 weeks or 1 month, and I think it's less for a contractor. My dev lead was a contractor. He left the organization within 10-15 days. So many things were there. So many things were there. The new dev lead who joined, he was not having any idea what we have to do, because the project was in mid. We had some releases planned for the next month. So many things were there. How we could have, overcome this situation. So a very good thing we did was we created an onboarding document for leads specifically, so that he should know that this is the thing, this is the release process, this is the thing. If we didn't have that onboarding documentation, then what could have happened? We could have, not, we were not able to meet our deadlines, or we could have taken some more time. And KTs, many KTs from other dev leads or other developers, in order to, make sure that the new dev lead is comfortable enough to go through that. But now what has happened? Half of the time has reduced, because we already had the documentation, we had some recordings on place. So this is one of the processes which we were following, which ultimately helped us. So the processes which are helping us in making our work better without losing the value of Scrum is always good. So I think this is kind of request I'll make to everyone, that don't misread the word people over process. We should always give priority to employees, their health, their concerns, but at the same time we need to make sure that some of the processes, not all, some of the processes are really good to have. If it is enhancing your skills, if it is making useful contribution to your project. I think that is all I can say for now.
Wonderful, Shefali. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay. So next one is regarding scope creep, scope changes. So this is a common phenomena in most of the projects. So how as a Scrum Master you work with your project with your team in case of scope change?
Okay, so scope creep is a very hot topic in any of the agile framework, in any of the framework, be it in waterfall. Scope creep, I'll define what scope creep is. So scope creep is something uh, which is kind of creating a hurdle in our current process, in our current requirements. For example, we have committed to, say, 10 user stories in this sprint, and we are exhausted with our capacity. But the upper management or a product owner is coming in middle of the sprint, in midst of the active sprint, that this is something we need to do on urgent, a new work. So that has a lot of impact on the current tickets, on the current stories, on the work we are doing. We have to, halt the current work, and in order to make sure that the new things are, getting acknowledged. So this is something, and scope creep is very common, not only in the active sprints or not only in the active work, but during the requirement phase also. We have taken the requirements from the business, from the stakeholders, and we have created all the necessary features, epics, and everything. And after that, before just the development work started, we got to know that no, we have to change many things. So how we handle that? So generally, sometimes the work is so critical, it's either directly related to the timelines, or it's directly related to the cost, it's directly related to the marketing competition. So we can't avoid that. We have to take some work in mid, just to make sure that there should not be any huge loss in terms of cost, in terms of you know in terms of competition we are facing from market. Like, we should not left behind. But how we make sure that it should not be a regular thing, scope creep cannot be a regular thing, or how we can make sure when scope creep is there, what we need to do. So there are two things here. First, if we have to work on certain things which we have not planned, we have to inform the project higher management that because of this, other works will get affected. We have to ask the developers what are the estimates for them. And for example, XYZ work, if we have one work which we have to take in mid, it is taking around 1 week to complete, and we have a 10 days of sprint. 1 week as in 5 working days. So we have to ask, first thing, we have to tell the upper management that it will affect the current ongoing work. Second thing, we have to make sure the developers are fully aware what they want to achieve with that work. So basically, a refinement should happen. Third thing, we have to ask what is the estimation, and because of that, what other work will be affected, and what we have to negotiate with the product owner. I think here the negotiation part is very important, because even if we are taking some work, we have to take some work out of the sprint or of the current ongoing work. So negotiation is very important, and everybody should be in sync. Product owners, developers, scrum masters, stakeholders should be in sync with each other, that because of so and so work, these are the work which are, we are pulling out from the sprint. So this is all we have to do when we have to make sure that we have to, acknowledge the new work as soon as possible. The second thing is, if the work is not that important, even though it is coming in the middle of the sprint, it can wait for the next 2-3 days or 4 days. Then we can cut some slack for the developers to say that, okay, the work they are doing currently, let them finish in a day or two, and then we can work on that. So at the end, what matters is everybody should be in sync. Developers should not be exhausted with their capacity. They should not be pressurized. Product owners, stakeholders, and everyone should understand that, okay, this is an ongoing work and we are going to complete that. So assurance, transparency, negotiation, everything we have to do. But at last, everybody should be in sync. I think that answers your question.
Wonderful, Shefali. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, so next one is a little interesting for me as well. So, as a Scrum Master, how you help your team in developing or in working with user stories? So, from creation to execution. Yeah, that's a question, Shefali.
Okay. Uh, and actually, it's an interesting question for me also, because you might have seen that different projects have their own ways of working when it comes to story creation, task creation. Some gives preference to features, some gives preference to proper hierarchy, like Epic should be having features, feature should be having user stories should be having tasks. And they may follow everything differently, but how I help is, first of all, the requirements should be clear. I mean, developers should be very comfortable with the requirements. They know what they are going to achieve. And architects, or in my case, I'll give you example of my project. So in our project, BAs or architects, they create a working session between them and developers including testers too, to make them go through all the business requirements. BAs will take care, and a solution architect will tell them that, okay, these are the steps we need to follow in order to reach the ground level, in order to reach what we are going to achieve for the users. So first of all, three amigos should happen. And if developers are clear, we are going to have a refinement session where we are going to create the user stories. I'm sorry. Now, during the obviously features will be there. Features will be created. In our cases, feature will be created by the BAs. I mean, they are the accountable people for creating the features. And out of that feature, we are going to create our user stories. User stories are basically something developers should be accountable for. I mean, they are accountable for refining them. They are accountable for estimating them. So when we do our refinement session, during user story creation also, I think you might have heard about the invest principle. Everybody has. When you're preparing for an interview, when you're preparing for a Scrum Master role, you always go through this invest principle. So obviously, invest principle is necessary. So when you create a user story, invest, one thing, that is bookish definition. You have to make sure the requirements are clear. You have to make sure that in order to work on that story, there should not be any dependency or risk. Dependency on a third party or anything, data dependency. And risk is, if you are going to work on this story, it should not impact other stories. Also, all these things we have to take care during the user story creation also. So there is a kind of artifact which I follow when developers create the stories. So first thing is, yes, there should not be any dependency and any risk for that ticket, because if that tickets we are going to bring in the active sprint, we have to make sure that developers can start working on them as soon as it comes to our sprint without dependent. And they should not say that, oh no, it had a dependency on some other thing. So that we have to make sure during the story creation also, if there is a dependency, if there is a risk, if there is any kind of blocker, we have to highlight, and we have to make sure that we are going to acknowledge that thing and resolve them as soon as possible. The second thing is during estimation thing. So estimation is also very underestimated thing. Estimation is underestimated. What I'm saying, yeah. So estimation in story points, in t-shirt size, anything. So developers should be having a very far understanding of how they are going to estimate. They should consider all the things. They should consider analysis. They should consider the development, unit testing, proper testing, whether we are going to do the staging testing and deployment testing twice. Like in our project, what we do is we do a unit testing in local environment, then testers will do a testing in staging, then in kind of PR, sorry, what that word is called, the feature flag testing just before releasing the to production. So these three testing are tested in one particular story. So obviously we have to count all of them when we are giving estimates. It should not be like, oh, this is a 2 days work, we are giving 3 story points, but actually it's a 5 story pointer, because we have to do a lot of testing, this and that. And the PR merge also takes a lot of time, because we have to solve the linting issues and all. So all these we needs to incorporate initially only during our estimations. And obviously the ticket should be independent enough. It should not be too long. The user story should not be too long that it is taking more than a sprint or more than a couple of sprints to work on. So if, and obviously invest principle, first thing is independent. So this is a very basic thing. Sometimes the developers are like, okay, now let's do everything in one story. Why we have to create multiple stories? We have to create multiple stories because your story is not independent enough. You have to break down, you have to make sure that the ticket should be small enough to be completed within a week or within a sprint, and they should be releasable, testable. So all these, because sometimes you say that, okay, and I think this is happening in many projects, many companies. No negative thing, but yeah, it is happening that sometimes people will say that, okay, let's create one story for development and one story we will create for testing. So let's complete this development story in this sprint and testing will be taken care in next sprint. Is this the right process? No. Why? Because the story should be independent enough to be released. And if you not have done testing, you'll not be able to release that particular user story, right? So all these things, I think it's a role of a Scrum Master to educate the team. Initially, it will be, little messy, because you'll be having a lot of questions coming from developers. But ultimately, they will understand that, okay, user story should be like that it doesn't have any dependency. It should be proper estimated, it should be testable, it should be releasable, and it should be small enough to fit in a sprint, until unless there is a kind of examples or exceptions we have to do. And there are always exceptions. So then, I think that is how
Wonderful.
I'm going to help, or I'm helping the developers team now.
That's great. Yeah. Wonderful, Shefali. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. So the next one is that how are you going to measure that your sprint is successful?
Yes, very interesting questions. People who will be watching the video may expect me to say by measuring their capacity and velocity, which is very wrong. Let me start giving a few examples on this. So basically, there are different types of Scrum teams, right? First Scrum team, let's say there are 3 types of Scrum team. First is who just have started as a Scrum team. Second is who has completed like 10-15 sprints, so they are like comfortable enough with their own work and all. Third is matured Agile team, working in particular project from past many months and all. They know what to do, they are self-organized, they can manage their own work. So how do you measure success? So success is measured, that a sprint is successful by considering the levels of Scrum teams. For example, for a beginner, for a team which has just started, they have completed 4 or 5 sprints hardly. We have to make sure we cannot measure their success in terms of velocity, because they might not be aware about each and everything that is happening in a project. They might not be aware about the full application which we are working on. So the first thing which I'll say when a Scrum team is very new, all the team members are comfortable. They are making some progress. If not, all the things they are going to complete, they are committing to, at least they are making some progress. They're understanding the project well. Happiness index is something I really rely on for all the types of Scrum teams. They should be happy. They should not feel pressurized. That means the retrospectives are going really well. The developers and the product owners or whoever is involved with the Scrum team, they should understand the value of all the Scrum ceremonies or events. They should understand the project well. They should understand the products well. And the scope creep. You just asked me a question about scope creep. So scope creep should not be happening. And if it is happening, somehow in some sprints, they should be well managed. Ultimately, the transparency should be there in all the teams. And this is why I'm saying that why I'm measuring this as a part of success of the sprint, because when you initially started, these are the some crucial things like the transparency, like the sync between all the team members, the sync between the product owner, developers, the stakeholders. They are very important because that will lay a foundation for your upcoming sprints, for your upcoming task and requirements. Now coming to the teams which are intermediate or which has already completed like 15, 20 sprints. So obviously there is a concept of measuring the velocity there, that they are constant or kind of increasing with their velocity. That is one thing, but that should not be the only factor. The second is obviously uh, their estimation are getting better. They are estimating their stories well. They are taking the work just up to the mark, not not undertaking, not overtaking. They are meeting their sprint goals. Yeah, I was searching for this word, sprint goal. They are meeting their sprint goal. They are properly communicating. They are negotiating. Their negotiation process should improve. Um, and for the very matured agile teams, I think obviously they should be to the point to you know in intermediate teams plus beginners, whatever I said about these two should all be up point for the matured agile. They should understand everything and they should be self-organized, because what we expect from a matured agile team is they should be self-organized. Other than what is not in their hand, whatever the help they need from the management or external team, small things, the matters which are internal to the team, they should be able to resolve them by themselves. They should focus on increasing their velocity. Obviously, I'm saying velocity because I think this is one of the things which are quantified and which we can see from our eyes. The happiness index, obviously, we can't see. The other things we can't see. So ultimately, it comes to the velocity for the matured agile teams, that now they have a better understanding of how they are estimating their work, what they are achieving, how they are handling the scope creep and other things. So ultimately, they are in a verge of increasing their velocity. They also contribute to the new requirements. They should always have a saying during their Three Amigos session. This is what we expect from a matured agile teams, to see that whether they are being successful or not.
Thank you, Shefali, for that. Okay, so you talk about velocity. So let's assume that the team velocity is dropping over the period of time. So the team is, let's say, matured and they're already into that particular system, they're in and out. But then suddenly that the velocity is dropping. So what do you think? Like, what will be the reason and how to fix that?
Okay, so uh, again, it will have many scenarios. If it's a mature agile team and their velocity dropping sprint by sprint. So the first thing we need to consider is whether there is a new requirement or there is a new feature came up within a couple of sprints. I'll give you a very nice example on this. So in one of my projects, this has happened that uh, if we compared velocity of past 6 sprints, this it's always fluctuating and in a great pace. Like in one sprint they were completing 50 story points, in the next sprint they completed only 20, and in the next sprint they were completing 60 or 70. So I think I came to a very interesting conclusion that in the first few sprints where the velocity was high, they were working majorly on the improvements or defects of when the features were already existing and they were enhancing it. So they were already aware about the features. The code was already there. And in the sprints where the velocity was less, they were focusing on a new feature. So they have to create everything from scratch. So this can be one of the reasons. We just have to identify what is working for the team and what is not. So we have to, I went to my senior scrum master and told that, have you seen this pattern that whenever they are working more on the improvements, or the bugs where the features are already known to them, their velocity increases like anything. But when they are working on a new requirement, when they have to build everything from scratch, they don't know. There are so many unknowns, and they have to work on a lot of spikes, particularly. So at that time, their velocity decreases. So this is one of the factors, and this is very natural that when you're going to a new place, when you are working in a new place, you'll take some time to adjust, right? I'm working to a new place. I'm still not able to figure out what exactly they are working on. But when you talk to my previous projects, they are working for 2 or 3 years. I'm very versed there. You can ask me anything and I'll say. So this also we have to consider. The second thing is there any new joiner or any, kind of resources, new joiners, resources, what's the word I'm looking for? Resources, mismanagement has happened. Mismanagement is the right word here, because sometimes what happens is, okay, this person is free, let me take this person's half capacity in the next sprint. Or, okay, there is a new joiner here. You cannot expect a new joiner to start, giving you value from the very starting, at least for the couple of sprints. So this also we need to consider. Obviously, when a new joiner joins the team, it will gradually decreases, or not gradually, it will decreases your velocity for a couple of sprints, and then it will be normal once you'll get comfortable. The other thing is, what are the types of leaves the people have taken? For example, if a person, we have five team members, and out of them, two has taken sick leave for 4 or 5 days in a sprint. So half of the sprint were gone for them. So these are some of the small things we have to consider. That what type of work are they under pressure? Because sometimes it happens they are being under pressure and they are not able to perform. So here, especially the role of a scrum master comes into picture, that they have to make sure that their teams are comfortable, their teams are fine with their work, and they know what they have to do. Because obviously it's a very common pattern in most of the IT industries, that they will come to you with the requirements, and they will give you a deadline. They'll give the estimate, and they will give you estimates that, okay, this is a small work, it will take only 1 week. But developers will say, no, it will take 2 weeks. But then they will pressurize the team. No, this needs to be done in a week. Otherwise, there will be consequences. So what will happen? Obviously, when a work is a 2 week long work and you're trying to complete it in a week, that will not happen. And ultimately, people will say, or the management will say that, okay, this team is underperforming. But is it really the case? No. This is something we need to acknowledge, and this is something we need to be very transparent with everyone, that our work can be completed within within the required time. It should not be focused on your deadline. So yeah, related to fluctuation in velocities in multiple sprints, we have to make sure what exactly is impacting the velocity, whether it's the new work, is there any new team member has joined or an old member has exited, whether it's a work pressure. There are multiple things. So it's really based, it's really scenario based.
Great, Shefali. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Looks like we are good for today. Ali, for joining us and sharing your insights. And friends, if you found today content helpful, please remember to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. We will have more sessions with Shefali in future. So thanks everyone, and thanks Shefali one more time.
Thank you, Sunil, for having me here.